All right, what's up, everybody? Time once again for the weekly Ask Me Anything. Waiting here for everybody to sort of jump on, see what we get here. I just sent this out via email. So this is sort of the replay zone, I think, because there's nobody on live yet. I'm waiting for everybody to sort of jump on. So the only people that see this part is the replay people. So anyway, we'll give a few minutes here for everybody to jump on here as well. Actually, I need to do something real quick before we do this. While I'm waiting. What is up, JC? What is up, man? I can't pronounce that, unfortunately. I don't know how to read that name. But what's up? What's up, Wrecking Wall? All right, as everybody comes in, do me a favor. I meant to do this last week, but I'm one of those old guys that is still sort of gets tripped out by the fact that I can instantly communicate with people from all around the world. So why don't you guys tell me? Just post in the chat where you guys are watching from. It's sort of just thrill of mine. All right, looks like we got a couple on here. Ring Shiro, what's up? Glad you're on. New York for Wrecking Wall. Let's see, Serbia. That's pretty cool. Miami, Florida. I'm wishing I was living there around about now. I thought April was supposed to be spring, but apparently it's still winter these days. So, all right, well, we'll go ahead, and if you guys got questions, go ahead and start posting those and get into this. I'll sort of do the little admin thing to begin with. Obviously, this is the Ask Me Anything that I do on a weekly basis, so you can ask me whatever you want. I will try to answer your questions as best I can. If I can't answer it, I'll just tell you I can't answer it. Not really my wheelhouse. Um, I will, if you guys want to make sure I answer your question, you can do the super chat thing. I'll make sure and answer all of those before I jump off. I'll also answer those first. And just like last week, I created or I'm doing the same coupon code I did for the live stream last week. So you can use the coupon code RADICAL, and that will get you 50% off anything in my store at store.johnmorrisonline.com, any of my courses and so forth. So that's good for during the live stream and up to an hour afterwards. So that out of the way, I'm just sort of here for your guys' questions. So if you guys got anything, shoot it on over. I don't really see any at this point. So let me get this over to live chat. I just broadcasted this too out on my email list, and I think that takes a while to kick through. So might take a little bit for us to get some people here, but oh, that's another thing. Have any of you guys seen Infinity War, the new Marvel movie? I just went to that last night with my son. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but that might be the most depressing movie I've ever watched. If you guys have seen it yet, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's a good movie, though. It's definitely worth seeing, but I was like, wow. All right. What's up, Ramon? All right. So let's see. Ramon has a question. He says, how do I price my services as a freelancer online? So I think there's a couple things here. There's no the big thing is there's no, hey, this is what the price should be. Okay. Like there's no I'm trying to say there's no hard, fast sort of way to just nail down exactly what a price should be. What's up, Baron from Kenya? That's pretty cool. It's a process. Okay. So pricing is a process, it's not a number. You ultimately arrive at a number, but yet again, you have to understand it's that process. So, what does the process look like? There's a couple things. One, you need to figure out what the market price is for what you do. And so, the way that you do that is you figure out sort of what a particular service package is that you offer. And again, this is why one of the reasons why I say doing end results, specific end results, as opposed to, hey, I'm just a web developer and I offer my services. Because when you do that, it makes it a lot easier for you to figure out how to price, because you can actually then go and look at what other people in that particular market, what they're delivering, and then what they're charging for that. And that gives you'll start to see some ranges, and that gives you an idea of what the range is. So let's just say that for whatever you're doing, the range is like $3,000 to $5,000 happens to be what someone is charging what people are, or the market rate for building some kind of new site. Okay, so that gives you a understanding of a range, and then it also gives you, okay, they're delivering this, and this, and that's going to give you the client expectation, what the client in their mind is thinking that they're going to get and what they're going to have to pay. And if you look at sort of any market, this is really the way it works. I mean, we're getting ready to sell my house, and what's the first thing a realtor does when you sell your house? They show up at your house and they give you comps. They show you what other stuff in that particular area, same kind of house, same sort of square footage and all of that. They show you what other houses that are similar to yours are selling for. That helps you establish a market price, and then you sort of adjust from there. So you got to first figure out that market price for what it is that you're doing. And again, that's why I can't tell you, hey, this is your price. It's a process. So depending on what your service is, you got to go through that, figure out the market price. And then the second thing is, you got to figure out, you got to look at that and decide if that is what you're comfortable with. You have to sort of find out your personal price. So let's say you go through it and you find out the market price is $500, and you're like, I'm not willing to do that for $500. Okay, so now you have to, that sort of comes into play, and then you have to figure out, do I need to go into something else to offer different services, or are there add-ons that I can put with mine that make mine different that will allow me to charge more? So maybe instead of just building a website, I'm going to add on SEO services, or I'm going to add on, membership services or payment integration or something along those lines. What are the things that I can add on to up my price to get me to where I'm comfortable? So again, those are probably the two biggest things to look at when it comes to pricing your services, are the market price and then what you personally are willing to accept. Because if you start doing work for that's consistently more work than you want to do for less than you want to make doing it, you're going to burn yourself out and sort of be miserable. And a lot of the reasons why people freelance are to get away from feeling like they're not getting what they deserve, not getting paid what they want, etc. So don't set yourself up for a situation that's not going to be sustainable long term in that sense. All right, Wrecking Wall. CS degree worth it in 2018 for web dev slash software development? Seems like it's becoming more required these days. I feel like it's the opposite, to be honest. Um, I had Ryan Carson, he's from Team Treehouse, on several months ago to do an interview with. And one of the things that he points out is, I think it was a study by Indeed that by 2020, there's going to be 1.3 million tech jobs. I think it was 1.3 million, or was it? Yeah, 1.3 million tech jobs that become available in the tech sector, and only 400,000 CS degree graduates. So there's about 900,000 jobs out there that there's not going to be a CS degree graduate for. And so that that just means that there's going to be a bunch of jobs available and a bunch of employers who aren't going to be able to hire people who have CS degrees. And it's actually, according to what he was saying, it's actually probably more than that, because that survey that Indeed did only covered tech sector jobs. It didn't cover other jobs where, say your local plumber, uh, they get to the point where they need someone to run their website, and so they're hiring someone to come in and actually do all of their website and tech stuff. That survey didn't include those types of jobs, and there's probably as many, if not more, jobs when you start looking at all of these industries. And so again, there's just going to be a ton of jobs out there and a very small pool of CS degree developers to pull from. So uh, to say it's required, I mean, maybe it's an advantage potentially, but is it required? I don't think that's the case. I think it's the opposite, and I think it's going to go more and more that way. So again, I don't think that's it at all. All right. Do you use WordPress plus any other platform for freelancing work? Yes, I use WordPress, primarily a WordPress developer. I would say my all of my initial freelancing that I did, I've talked about this before. I'm sort of down to one client now, but um, all the work I do for them, all the work I started off doing, all of that was all WordPress. So, yep. I have a website knowledge, but both development but have been unable to get a job. So, I mean, I guess I would probably need a little bit more information. What have you applied for? What have they said about why they haven't hired you? That sort of thing. I can't really tell you exactly why, what to do there if I don't have a little more information there. Okay, Raja, Upwork always reject my profile. The algorithm, not the humans. The AI doesn't let my profile reach humans. My expertise are Node, React, Android, MongoDB, Java, and deployment handling. So the thing about getting it, the initial approval. So this is one of the things that I've sort of tweaked lately with what I teach people when it comes to Upwork, because initially Upwork didn't do a lot of rejecting. Like, it was not something that happened very often, but you've seen sort of the rise of some of these curated sites like TopTal, and I think Upwork is trying to do like a sort of quasi curated type site. They're trying to do some of that, and they're trying to keep the site from becoming too inundated with the same kind of freelancers, which makes sense. And so what they're, as they've sort of made this, then what has happened is, if you go into a very specific if you go into a very specific sort of niche, like I advise you do in a lot of my Upwork videos and training and so forth, then it's possible that there's already a lot of freelancers on the site doing that. And so you sort of have to do one thing in order to get approved, and then you have to do another thing in order to get jobs. So in order to get approved, you sort of have to cast a wide net. I would list just about everything that you can think of in terms of your skill set, to see if you can sort of hit one of those things that they're looking for freelancers for, and just get in the door. And then once you get in the door, then you take your profile and you really niche it down and focus it on something specific. So you have to again, you have to sort of do two different things based off of um, uh, whether you're getting approved or actually getting work and so forth. So that would be the approach that I would take if you haven't yet. It's sort of hard to tell exactly different reasons. They sort of give the same reason every time. We already have a bunch of um, we already have a bunch of they always say the same thing when it comes to uh, getting approved and why you haven't got approved. So it's sort of hard to tell exactly what the real reason is. Show how do you make dynamic website with the technologies you know? Okay, well, I don't have screencast on this right now, so I'm not gonna be able to do that. When are you gonna get your haircut? Never. Now that you said that. Code normal. I'm a Laravel web developer, but unable to get web app work. Client have demand for website development where WordPress shines. How to handle this transition? Me again learning WordPress. Well, yeah, I mean, if you've learned Laravel, I mean, I haven't done a ton of Laravel stuff, but if you've learned Laravel, WordPress probably is going to be a little bit easier. I mean, it's a similar idea in terms of a code base. Obviously, they're two different things. One's a framework, one's an application, but it's sort of a similar thing in terms of, when I assume when you're in Laravel, there's sort of this idea of the Laravel way, right? You don't necessarily want to go when you're creating apps with Laravel, you don't necessarily want to go and write a bunch of your own custom PHP code if Laravel already does that sort of thing. It's a similar idea with WordPress. So, you want to you want to learn how WordPress works. You want to learn its hooking system. You want to learn its different APIs, and you want to, as much as possible, before you ever start writing anything custom inside of PHP, you want to make sure that you've checked WordPress first to see if it doesn't already do the thing that you want to do, and if it does, you should use that instead of writing your own thing. A really good example of that is custom post types. I think I've talked about this in about every live stream that we've done, but uh, custom post types is a method that WordPress has for you storing data, and by default, that's the thing that you should do. You should use custom post types first, and then only not use that if you have some really compelling reason not to. And it's mainly comes down to if your data, the data that you're trying to store is just completely different from the data that a custom post type sort of has in it by default. And so again, that's one example of where you might if you, as a PHP developer, a Laravel developer, you might think your default might be, hey, I'm going to go in and create a custom table, and I'm going to use the, the WordPress database class, or maybe I'm going to even just write my own queries and query the database directly, and I'm going to create all of this UI and all of these things that you could make a custom post type work, or you should be using the WordPress database class instead of querying directly and that sort of thing. So it's more just about that adherence to understanding and following the WordPress way, and then figuring out how to do it. Like, what are the classes? What are the functions? What are the APIs? What are those sorts of things? But if you've learned Laravel, you should have the PHP knowledge to where you can go in and understand that stuff pretty straightforward. So I don't think the transition would be as hard as you think, because you're already sort of used to doing that kind of thing. All right, Supermo, can we get some toots for API retrieval from multiple sources? Then to display the compared data received via PHP page. I will see what I can do on that. I'm obviously not going to do that here. How can I get hired as a web developer if I have no experience? Yeah, that's an interesting one. The thing to do is to get experience, and there are ways that you can get experience without getting hired. So, I've sort of talked about this. Experience is sort of a tricky word, right? Because a lot of people just sort of assume experience is just getting hired by paid clients, or getting hired for a paid job by a company. But that's not necessarily the only kinds of experience that you can get. One of the things I tell freelancers is, hey, if you don't have a portfolio, you haven't done any work for paid clients, well, whatever you're ultimately going to deliver for clients, say it's a membership site, or say it's a e-commerce site, or say it's just a regular old blog, whatever you decide your main service offering is going to be, go out and build like 10 of those just for nobody. Just build them, and then take screenshots and put them in your portfolio. Well, technically that is experience, because it may not be client to client paid work, but you've actually built the thing that you're going to be building for people. Is it as good of experience as paid work or a job? No, but it is experience, and it's better than nothing. So if you have to go build stuff for nobody, do that. If you have to go work on an open source project, do that. If you have to do projects for free for friends, do that, but do something so that you aren't in that category of no experience anymore. So go out and get experience. That's the way to do it. And there's lots of ways that you can do that without having to rely on anybody else, anybody hiring you, any of that sort of thing. So again, get out and get experience. That's the way to do it. All right. How to verify gender submitted as true, like for social media. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more of a tech thing, probably not something I'm going to answer here. Thanks a lot. Have you used cloud platforms, Amazon, AWS, etc., when you did work for past clients? About the only thing I've ever messed with is Amazon S3. Um, Sort of way back in the day when video was kind of making its first sort of presence on websites and so forth, and so I would um, I built this plugin for WordPress that had a video player, and it would connect to a video stored on Amazon S3 and that sort of thing. So I've messed with the API a little bit in that sense, but it's been a while. I haven't really messed with any of that stuff lately. Hey, can I make some money on Upwork knowing just HTML5 and CSS3 following your advices? I think the potential for that stuff sort of thing is always there. The big thing is if you only know front end technologies, then you have to have a way to sort of give something of value to the people that might hire you. Okay, and the reality is just knowing HTML5 and CSS probably isn't. I mean, there's some value in that, but the amount of value is probably limited outside of if you get really, really good at design. And so uh, you would probably, I think I've said this before about PHP too, but you would probably, as a front end developer who only knows front end languages, you would make more of your money by investing and getting really good at Photoshop and then sort of being able to turn that into designs with HTML and CSS3 and that sort of thing, then you would like diving into HTML and CSS really heavy, right? The design, what I'm getting at is design part of it is going to be where your value comes from if you only know those two languages. So I would, if that's what you want to do, I would dive heavy in design. I mean, and you can look at examples, right? So for example, I think Wrap Bootstrap is a good one. It's basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Most of what those templates are, they've got hundreds, maybe even thousands on their site. I don't know what their revenue is, but it's a pretty popular, well-known site, and they're operating off of primarily HTML and CSS framework, JavaScript, of course, included in that. But it's a front end, it's a front end framework. So, and there's a market for that sort of thing out there. You just have to, the way that they sell their stuff is the way that their designs look. So that's really what you're going to have to tackle with that. So you can't say, hey, I don't want to be good at design, or I don't want to learn what I got to learn for design, but I only want to do HTML and CSS. Those two things, I don't think you can do it that way. So I started creating the affiliate account on Amazon, but the agreement says that they can use info of my clients. Is it safe to accept that? I want my clients to be safe. I'm not sure on that, to be honest with you. I would, that's not a question I could probably really answer. You'd probably have to dive into all the legalese with that. So, please make more videos on PHP. I plan to more videos in Node.js. I don't know Node.js. Do you prefer freelancing or working as an employee? Actually, I just did a podcast on this. My latest podcast, episode 326, which by the way, if you guys haven't seen this, I'm not posting the podcast episodes on the channel anymore. I'm moving this channel back to sort of the where it started, which is tutorials, video tutorials, and I've separated that from the podcast. The podcast is going to be a podcast audio only. There's no videos. I am going to eventually create a separate YouTube channel, but the videos I upload will just be audio versions. And so if you guys were checking out the podcast on the channel, you'll actually have to go and off of YouTube and subscribe on Android or iTunes or one of the places over there. JohnMorrisShow.com has all those links. But I just did a podcast on this where one of the things that I'm noticing with the channel and getting back into doing the tutorials and so forth is that a lot of the people, I mean, a lot of the questions that I get in these AMAs, a lot of the people that ask me questions on YouTube or email or the videos that do very well tend to be around freelancing. And freelancing has always sort of been what I've done. I've worked technically as an employee, but it was actually for a company that originally I started off. They were a client of mine. I worked for them for a while as an employee and then went back to actually them being a client of mine. So I don't know that I can say that and I always, during that whole time I worked from home. It was, it was remote. Nothing really changed in terms of my day to day, what I did. So I don't know that I can really say that I've ever worked as an employee, but I can tell you why I got into web development, why I started doing all of this in the first place is because I couldn't stand getting up and putting on a uniform and going to a job and all that sort of thing. So 1,000 times over, I prefer freelancing over working as an employee. There certainly is a little bit more risk on a month-to-month basis, but when you get to a certain point where you've sort of figured things out and you've set up some systems in place, it can become pretty stable. All right, thank you. What's up, Crusader? Please, can I have 1,000 Rand, which is probably only like $3? I'll pass. Thanks. Hey, can you make more videos in Laravel? Like I said, I haven't really messed with Laravel. Is it hard to get good at WordPress to get paid? I'm going to say no. I mean, my first, so that company that I started out as a independent contractor, they're basically a client, moved to employee, moved back. That was my first hire, essentially, that I got hired for. And they hired me for WordPress stuff. And I didn't know much WordPress at the time. I knew enough to create a very simple plugin. I didn't know a ton of PHP at the time. And I was still able to get hired and get paid for that company. So I don't think it actually takes as much as a lot of people think. At the end of the day, this is the thing I harp on over and over again. At the end of the day, what matters is if you can deliver on a sort of specific end result, whether it's for a company or it's for freelance for clients. Can you deliver on this thing? So what do you need to do to get to that point? Well, you need to learn what you need to learn in order to deliver on the thing that you're going to say you can deliver on. I mean, that's essentially what it comes down to. So however hard that is, whatever thing you pick, that's going to be how difficult it is. So thanks for the answer. In the video player interface S3 sounds cool. Yeah, it was, but I mean, it's sort of pointless at this point. A lot of those services have sort of subsumed all of that. Let's see. Looks like comments back and forth. Yeah, looks like I sort of ran out of questions here. So if you guys have more questions, be sure to drop those in. I'll do my little admin thing here again while we wait for some more questions to pop in. But again, this is my weekly Ask Me Anything. You can ask me anything. I will do my best to answer it. If I can't, I will say I can't, as I've already done a couple times here. This is primarily, I'm not going to be able to do tech stuff here, really, because I don't have the screen sharing thing and all that stuff set up. And I don't even know if I will. Anyway, ask me whatever you want. I'll try to answer it. If you want to make sure I answer your question, then you can do the super chat thing. I'll make sure and answer all those before I jump off. I answer those first. And also, like I did last time, I created a coupon code for you guys on live. It's radical, gets you 50% off anything in my store.johnmorrisonline.com during the live stream and for an up to hour afterwards. All right, looks like we got a few more coming in. Do you see the cloud taking away jobs? I It's a little vague. I mean, I don't. It depends, I guess, what you're talking about when it comes to the cloud. I mean, if anything, it's creating jobs, right? So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can really say the cloud is taking away jobs. John, I listened to your podcast and support you on Patreon. I like the episodes on sales funnels and channels that are not Upwork. Good to know. I've sort of noticed that. I plan to kind of keep going that route. So it's good to hear that. Do you recommend any dietary supplements to improve mental focus? That is a great question. I got to say I'm really happy that you asked that question. I am like on this. I've always been like people have sort of noted this in comments and stuff and so forth, but I'm not a small guy by any means. I think I weigh about 270 right now. And I grew up, a big part of that is I grew up playing football. So I've always been into sort of exercise and that sort of thing. However, I've sort of, as I've gotten older, that has waxed and waned. Anyway, I've been sort of on this health kick lately. And there is one that I tell everybody, like everybody that comes to my house, I sort of now put through this rigmarole of, oh, hey, you got to watch this video and I got to tell you about this supplement and so forth. And there is one, and I don't have anything to do with this company or anything like that. Obviously, research all this on your own, but it's called Avmacol. And I first saw this was this lady, Rhonda Patrick, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who's on the Joe Rogan podcast. She was talking about this compound called sulforaphane, and they so what she references, there have been some of the human studies they've done have been on kids with autism, and I think it was Down syndrome, and they have different tests to assess, how they assess where they're at with uh, those different conditions, and they found that these people who were taking the sulforaphane, any sort of supplementation on a regular basis, scored 20 to 30% higher on all of these tests. And they've done a ton of studies, non-human studies in rats and so forth. And anyway, I started taking it and I sort of noticed what she talked about. It's sort of like this little, you just feel a little more alert. And I tend to get a lot of stuff done when I'm taking it regularly, and it does seem to make me more mentally alert. And so that would be one that I recommend. It's Avmacol, Avmacol. It's basically broccoli sprouts, like somebody said. It's broccoli, yeah, it's broccoli sprouts, but it's in pill form. And I really like that. I also take free-form amino acids before I go to bed. It helps me sleep better, and because I work out, it helps me recover. All right. A car and some credibility would be nice. It's because of this voice that I have found mine in terms of web dev, obviously. So I just want to say thank you. Now, about that 1,000 rand, all right? Question: what do you think a monthly WordPress maintenance service should cost? That's an interesting question. Again, I'm just gonna default to it. It's not a number, it's a process. So, what are other people out there who are doing that same thing charging, and what are they delivering, and what are you gonna deliver, and how does that affect what you're gonna offer price-wise? That's the way to figure that out instead of me just guessing at a number. So, the thing is and I can understand because I did a lot of WordPress work, but I never did maintenance. I only did new. I hated doing maintenance, to be honest with you. So that's why I didn't do it. So that said, I have done on been on retainer before, but that was again primarily for new builds because they were doing so many new builds. And so I was charging, they were having me do this clone thing that I charged $3,000 a month for. So when they put me on retainer, I charged them $2,000 a month to sort of make it work their while. And it was a great deal for me because I had this sort of a regular sort of income coming in from that particular client. So hey, John, how to make my portfolio on Upwork if I have several niches, web apps, mobile apps, etc. You always say focus on one. I mean, yeah, I guess I would say focus on one, but if you have several, if you're just going to say no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on several niches. I think the thing to do is on Upwork when you look at a profile page, I think it's 4 that they show right off the top. So whatever your niches are, if you have 4 niches, show one from each niche so that people have some sense and just sort of stagger them like that so that people don't look at your portfolio and they see all mobile apps and they're like, well, I want your web app service. Like people are lazy. So you got to make sure and put it right in front of their face like that. So I want to create a PDF in PHP. Do you have any recommendations on how to do this? Or could you do a tutorial? I would say run. I messed with this once with one client and it was a complete pain in the butt. I used a class that was out there and it was finicky. I would guess things are better now, but my advice would be either run or go out there and find a well-established class that already exists out there. That not something I would ever want to dive into. It was a pain in the butt. Can you riff on health insurance costs as a freelancer? Another good question. I like these non-tech questions, guys. I like this. Okay. Yeah, I do something a little bit different because I'm sort of, and I know everybody has their opinions on this sort of thing, but I'm sort of done with the way things are being done here. And so there's 2 things that I do. One is I use a healthcare sharing ministry. And essentially what these are is they're these groups where and it's not insurance, but it's a healthcare sharing thing. So it's sort of similar. They don't call it a deductible, but you basically have a deductible. They don't call it a premium, but you basically have a premium. So I pay, I think it's like about $300 a month into this sharing thing. And my deductible is $10,000. So basically up to $10,000, I got to pay for anything. But after $10,000, they basically everybody else that's paying into the sharing community, those fees go towards people that submit hospital or health care costs that are covered by this sharing community. So it works a lot like insurance, but it's actually just a bunch of people that pay in and the money that's paid in is used to pay out. And it's a authorized exception here in the United States, at least to the Affordable Care Act. So I don't have to worry about any of the fine stuff for that. And I do that because mainly it's like some of the high deductible, low premium plans that you could get before, because my family and I pretty much never go to the doctor. And so if we do, in the past, what we've done is just paid for it. So that's what I do. And then there's also this new thing that a lot of doctors are starting to do, called direct primary care. And the way it works is you pay about, it depends on, I mean, around here, the lowest I've seen is 120. The highest I've seen is 300, but you pay a monthly fee and you basically get unlimited visits to the doctor. So you don't have any insurance. You just pay this monthly fee, and you can go as much as you want. And anything that they would do, that they could do in house, that they would do if you had insurance, they do with you with this monthly fee. And so I'm just about ready to sign up for one of those. And so I think we'll pay around 120 to 150. So our total health care, and we'll be able to go to see the doctor as much as we want. The visit times are 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes, all that. And I'll pay, anywhere 400 to 450 a month for it, which we were going to pay $1,300 a month when the whole Affordable Care Act thing. Ours was going to go up to $1,300 a month, and it was going to be a $10,000 deductible. So we saved quite a bit of money, and we actually are getting better care. That's what I do. Obviously, do what you want. Key is getting off sugar and carbohydrates. Yep. Switch to higher fat, moderate protein, low carb diet. My energy has increased immensely. Yeah, that's essentially, cutting out all the crap. I'm playing PUBG and watching you live. It's a good day. That's awesome. Hopefully you're winning. Do I get the best question of the day award? I don't know, man. That healthcare question was pretty close. I'll call it a tie right now. Is it just me? Is there something wrong with the stream? So anybody else having problems with the stream? I listen to Dr. Rhonda Patrick and support her on Patreon. Nice. She is intense and awesome. Yes, I've got like 3 videos of her every time somebody comes over. I'm like, all right, you got to watch all of these videos because like my little brother just came over and I made him watch all the videos. And he's like, wow, I'm like following everything that she has because she's just super smart. So yeah, I basically just do whatever she says. How about intermittent fasting? Yeah, so what I eat, I try to eat once a day. So basically, the way I look at it is I'm sort of always fasting because I eat once, and then when you eat, I don't eat again until 24 hours later. So I'm sort of always fasting like that. And since I've started doing that, I weigh 270 pounds, but it's not like I don't have any sort of fat on me, but I'm definitely not the 270 that you might think in your head. And a lot of that changes happened from doing this, going to that intermittent fasting like that. And so works really well for me because I hate spending time figuring out what to eat. I got stuff I want to do. I want to be doing this. I don't want to be spending my entire life, fixing food and eating and all that sort of stuff. So I just eat a big meal and then I just don't eat again until I'm hungry. And that's usually once a day. If I end up with a smaller meal at some point, I might get hungry again, but I just only eat whenever I'm hungry. Yep. I do not eat breakfast. Yep. And wait till noon before my first meal. Exactly. Same thing here. God, that's a big mic. There's a joke there, but I'm going to refrain. Yeah, it's just a Heil PR40, the new one I got. Python has multiple libraries for manipulating PDFs. Okay, there you go. Yeah, do that. Don't write it yourself. It's a pain in the butt. Any tax tips for a freelancer? Yes. Again, another good question. All right. Yeah, I mean, okay, let me preface, not a tax professional, blah, 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 disclaimer, etc. Okay. So what I do, the first thing you need to do is you need to have a way to track everything. So I use Wave accounting, but my little brother's sort of trying to sell me on, I think it's QuickBooks, and I think I might switch over to QuickBooks here, but you need some sort of system like that to be able to just track everything and every month go through and properly categorize. That's the most important thing, is making sure that your any income and expenses are tracked, right? Taking pictures of receipts, like all of these services as apps where you can take pictures of receipts and so forth. And so making sure everything is tracked and properly categorized every month or at least every quarter. And then from that, it makes it a lot easier for you to figure out, okay, what do I got to pay in taxes? So you got to figure out, at least here in the States, you got to figure out, okay, what's my federal rate? What's my state rate? And then you just sort of do the math of, here's what I had in revenue, here's my expenses, here's what's left. And what I do is I sort of just take that and use that to calculate my quarterly taxes. And it ultimately, each quarter, I'm basically paying in a little bit more, but it makes it so that I've done the thing where I've owed at the end of the year. That was like the first year I freelanced that happened, and it sucks. So I just like to avoid that as much as possible. So I try to pay in a little bit more during the year, and then I get a little bit back. Or the last quarter, what I do is I sort of, in January, because the year's over, I can do my taxes. And so I do my taxes with before I pay my last quarter from the previous year, because you don't have to pay it until like the end of that month or whatever. So I do my taxes and figure out it says I owe this. So then my last quarter payment that I make in January of the next year, I pay just what it says that I owe. And I sort of just break even that way. So that, I mean, that's what I do. The other thing is if you file yourself, use something like TurboTax. TurboTax actually has a thing. I did that this year for the first time. It has a thing where it'll tell you, based off of your taxes from this year, these are what we calculate your estimated payments will be for next year. And so I did that, and I have those numbers, and then every quarter I just sort of pay those. And I know that if this year I make dramatically more income than I did last year, then I'm gonna have to hold a little bit more aside, so that I don't screw myself at the end of the year. But you sort of, once you do it a year or two, you sort of just kind of figure it out. So that's what I would say. Check out Dr. Greger, How Not to Die book. Yeah, I think that I seen that recommended before. What's up, Steven? Good, glad you're on. Do you think it'd be good if you run a company getting work from freelance sites? I I guess I'm not 100% sure on the question. Do you mean, would it be good if you're on a freelance site to do an agency versus an individual? And I mean, I've sort of heard both ways. Me personally, I prefer doing the individual thing, because I think people are attracted to other people, not logos. But if you do a good job of establishing a brand, it can actually probably turn out to be more beneficial than maybe a personal brand. Um, but I think it's easier to do a personal brand. And for a lot of people who just don't want to get heavy into branding to the point to do what you would have to do to make that worthwhile, it's probably just simpler to go that way. So it sort of depends, though, if you want to build out a company and you want to hire people and so forth. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. So all right. I see your comment, Crusader, but I'm going to spare everybody. When I was younger, my dad would make me help them sort out all their receipts, which were stored in multiple shoebox. Do not do this. Yeah, I store my receipts in envelopes for the year, but I take pictures of them and put them into my accounting system. So charge enough so that you can pay your FICA and estimated quarterly tax. If you do not charge enough, you will end up owing. If you cannot save now, you will not be able to save then. Yeah, I mean, that was essentially my first year when I started freelancing. That was sort of the problem. Like I was making m- for me, I was making good money, but for my with my expenses and so forth, it was eating it up, and I basically wasn't setting any aside like I was supposed to. And it at the end of the year, it screwed me. So, what would be a good question to ask for someone who knows nothing about anything coding wise? Obviously, just started again learning PHP, but maybe this is a more advanced stream. No, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily a more advanced stream, but I guess I'm not 100% sure what the question means. Maybe one of you guys can help me out here. What would be a good question to ask for someone who knows nothing about anything? I don't want to go off on a tangent and it not be what you're really afterwards. So maybe you can give me a little bit more info on there. What are the secure ways of earning passive income? I'm not really expertise with JS development, so can't go for freelancing. I would say the thing with passive income is you have to, I talked about this on that last episode of my podcast. It's built for a certain mentality, a person who has a certain view of things, because you sort of have to be comfortable with not always being secure. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't establish systems that you're confident in, but if security is your number one priority, freelancing is probably going to be something that you struggle with, because it's going to scare the hell out of you on a daily basis. I mean, the majority of my income, I have no idea if next month any of it's gonna come in. That's just the reality of it. Like, I don't have that security. But I've been doing that for so long that I sorta am just used to that, and sorta know the things to do, and it is what it is for me. So, if security is the thing, then sort of freelancing or passive income or entrepreneurship may not be the best thing for you, because that's not it's the it, the person who has, I would say, and I know this is a loaded word these days, but freedom uh, or control of their own thing and not relying on other people. If that's your top priority, that's higher for you than security, then that's when sort of passive income, freelancing, these sort of things are probably more up your alley. In terms of what you can do for a little bit more security when it comes to passive income, it comes down to systems. It comes down to having system in place. One of the reasons why that, you know, I look at next month and I have no idea if I'm going to make any money from any of the stuff I do, and I don't just completely freak out and have confidence, is because I have I have a series of systems in place and things that I do that that have for every month for years now brought me a certain level of income. And then I orient my life in a way where uh what I can count on from those different things, those different systems, is enough for what I need. Like, I know what my bare minimums are that I have to make. I know what I can do if I'm not reaching that level and all that sort of thing. So you just sort of figure out what to do. And that's what gets you to the point where you can feel a little more secure, even though you're not actually secure with it. Hey, John, if I've been doing freelance while also working regular full time job, do you recommend filing for an LLC? Is that what you've done? Yeah, I would. If you're going to freelance, I would recommend filing for an LLC, mainly because, and you could probably do this as a sole proprietorship. I haven't actually really done that route, but with an LLC, it's more of a mental. I mean, I'm sure there's some tax benefits and liability benefits and all that, but for me, it's just a mental thing. It allows me to create something that's sort of separate from me, and I can, control the income and the expenses and all of that with its own bank account, its own, it's just separate. It's not integrated into all of my personal stuff and mix and match, and just makes it easier to make its own self-contained thing. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a tax professional. I'm not that, but I've done the LLC in the past. That's what I would uh, recommend. It's my first year. I'm going to be screwed this year tax wise. At the end of the day, the biggest thing is like set money aside. Okay. So all the stuff about figuring out the exact numbers and so forth, that's great. And you want to try to get precise with that. But at the end of the day, if you're setting money aside, like a lot of people will say set 20% aside. That may or may not be enough for your situation, but it's better than zero. And that's the big thing. So be setting something aside. You just have to be disciplined in order to do that, which is what I wasn't. I was just, at that time, I needed every dollar that was coming in. And what ended up happening, one of the things I didn't realize is at the end of the year, I owed money. I only owed like maybe $1,500. It wasn't like a ton, although at that time it seemed like it. I owned, I owed like $1,500, but what I didn't realize, when I was reading, I didn't read it good enough, I guess, is every month I went on sort of this payment plan and I was just paying $100 a month. They were charging me a $50 fee every month that I was late. So basically, it was like I was paying 50% of what I thought I was paying. And I did that for probably 6 months before I realized, holy hell, I'm getting screwed on this. And then we just paid it off and chunked it out as much as possible. So you don't want to have that big thing at the end of the year. Set stuff aside. There's going to be fees and all that stuff if you end up owing, but just set money aside, and having something is better than nothing. Is learning Java a good start to learn hacking, and what's the next step? I don't know. I don't do any of that stuff. What means system? Any example? Okay. This live stream is an example, right? My YouTube channel is an example. I put out videos, and I have a system. Like every video that I do, I promote something of mine. A lot of you may be like, "Oh, another ad," and so forth. That's what I have to do to run my business. That's part of my system. And so that's actually one of the things that you have to do is you have to be able to block out people that want to naysay and say negative things and do what you got to do for your business, for your system. So uh, that's one of the things is these videos, these live streams. I promote my products, and that just generates a certain amount of traffic to my sales pages, and then that generates a certain amount of revenue. And over time, you sort of those things are eerily consistent. If you're consistent in like if you just show up every day, again, this is one of the things I've said before. It does matter. I don't want to say it doesn't, but it almost doesn't matter in a certain way how good each individual piece is, right? There's not like you can there's not like this dramatic extra result you're going to get by doing something extra epic or whatever. Like you can go and make something really epic and your results for that video or that piece of content or whatever are generally going to be about the same. That's been my experience with it. And so those things tend to be very, very, it's like eerily consistent. And so with time, when you do that sort of thing, you sort of just sort of figure out what those numbers are, and you can sort of slowly grow them and piece everything together. But again, it that's what I mean when I say a system. Like there's just things in place. The videos, I have email, I have traffic that I get on my website that I direct certain places and so forth. That it's just there, and it's a system of moving people from being a prospect into ultimately being a customer. So, all right, DGB price prediction. I guess I don't get that reference. Maybe I'm showing my age here. After learning PHP, will I need to learn any frameworks also? If you want, I haven't really spent any time learning frameworks unless, I mean, I know WordPress is an application, but it sort of can be used in different ways. So anyway, you don't have to. They can be advantages. Like if you know Laravel, that's pretty popular right now, but I don't never get into the have to thing. We ever do a live meetup? Probably. I don't know that there's enough people in a certain area to really do that. And I don't think people are going to fly to see me. So what I know about is PHP coding. So my question would be, what advice would you give someone starting out in this area? Or what's something you'd wish you known rather than having to learn by mistakes? The biggest thing, and again, this will something I harp on. The biggest thing is instead of, oh, I got to learn all of these 1,000 things for PHP, is if you want to move from knowing nothing to getting to the point where you can start doing it for a living, then you need to focus on an end result. Pick one, learn how only the skills you need to learn in order to deliver on that thing, and then start marketing yourself as someone who can do that thing, whether it's freelance, whether it's working for somebody else. But don't go out and do this, oh, I've got this list of 1,000 things I got to learn. There's certainly some basics, but that's probably 20 to 30 things, not 100 things or 1,000 things. Focus in on the things that you need to learn in order to be able to get hired, in order to be able to deliver on something and so forth. That's the biggest thing that I'd recommend. And that's the biggest mistake I made. And that I wish I had known, that somebody had told me, and why I tell people over and over and over again. All right, you look good for 270. Yeah, that's not 270 years old. That's 270 pounds. Are you tall? 6'3", 6'3". So LLC can be a sole proprietorship or a corporation. That's right. It can be a pass-through entity. You can transition a sole proprietor to a corp. You can use the yep. Yes, keep your personal and business accounts separate. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's true. Do you build sites with SEO in mind? I don't market myself as an SEO person, but I mean, yeah, sure. You definitely, it's something that I keep in mind, right? But I just, again, as I've gotten older, I've gotten less and less of this being about me and my ego necessarily and what I can do. And I know there's a fine balance between ego and skill set and so forth. But if something will do what I need it to do already, I'm not going to rewrite it just to rewrite it. So I build WordPress sites primarily. I install Yoast SEO. I set that up for people, and that's about it. I leave it at that. That's not my wheelhouse. That's not how I market myself. And so I let it do what it's supposed to do, and I don't worry about it. It's the same thing with, I talked about this last live stream, with security, right? I don't dive into knowing all that stuff. There's services I can pay like $3 a month for that will do all the security stuff that I want to do. That's what they spend their lives doing. So I let them do it because I don't want to do it. So I think the thing is to not get too wrapped up in everything has to be like, I have to code everything myself and so forth. Certainly when you're learning, if you want to do all that, but you also don't have to learn everything, right? Again, going back to this niching thing, like, be good at one thing first, and then if you have interest in other stuff, do that. But again, I don't think you need to learn everything, and you certainly don't need to be an expert in everything. How do I get a portfolio going if I haven't had any clients? Just starting up, just make some random mock-ups. So I sort of addressed this, but yes, go make sites or whatever you're building. Go make that, make a bunch of them for nobody and put them in your portfolio. That's better than nothing. Why are machine learning engineers paid more than web developers? Probably the market, probably because machine learning, this is just my guess, machine learning is more of sort of the enterprise type thing. It's a really highly specialized skill. There's not a lot of people that can do it. And so it sort of becomes a supply and demand type of thing. The supply is growing, or the demand is growing, and there's maybe not as much supply yet as what is necessary. So people get paid more there, if that's true. Still working through Rob Percival's complete web developer course. Good course. Install the WordPress plugin for security. Exactly what I use. Is Bootstrap still relevant? That's a good question. I'm sure there'll be people on here will say absolutely not, but I think it is. I mean, it's still something that gets talked about. I still see people using it. The client that I have is using it for a back end WordPress interface, which is an interesting usage. But yeah, I think it still has some relevance out there. Is working for a small WordPress design agency a good way to transition to freelance? I mean, it could be, right? Because this is one of the things, like, a lot of people, sort of talked about this before, but we talk about the skill stuff when it comes to, and the technical skill when it comes to, um, you know, web development and getting hired and that sort of thing, and in particular freelancing. But there's also the working with clients, there's the getting work, there's all these other things that go with it, and sort of taking all of that on at once. You can do it, and I certainly did it, but there was a lot of hoops to jump through. Um, there's a lot of things that you have to learn. It can be a little bit overwhelming. So if you can go through something where you are working for a company where that company is working with clients, and you sort of get a secondhand experience of it, yeah, that can teach you a lot of things that you would otherwise have to learn on your own the hard way while you're trying to work and make income and so forth. So I think that could be a good transition from working a job to then working for an agency and seeing how that sort of thing is done, and then sort of going out on your own. Machine learning is hard. I bet so. Does machine learning engineers have a great future? Do you have any friends of a machine learning developer? My little brother wants to be a machine learning guy, but he's not actually one. Do they have a great future? No, because the robots are going to take over all their jobs anyway. So now, I mean, yeah, machine learning is pretty big right now. I think that's why Python is as popular as it is. I think people like to talk a lot about what's going to happen with that, but I don't think anybody really knows. So I think it's a wait and see type thing. But looking at it now, machine learning engineers, I think, have a pretty good present, and ultimately, I think that's more what you need to focus on. It's hyped big time offer this as a service, but people need to set up their data infrastructure first, similar to the pyramid of needs from psychology. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, that's not something that I mess with a lot. So, how can I use PHP to create a website that will function as a multi-user configurable timer to do wget requests with the ability to have accounts and multiple timers where the URL and time configs. Not really a question I can answer on this. Working for a company helps to learn pricing models. Yes, it helps to learn pricing models. It helps to learn how to interact with clients. It helps you to learn how to market. There's a lot of stuff that can help you with. So, are you going to watch the new Avengers movie? I was just talking about that at the beginning. I just went to it last night with my son. It's depressing. So, nobody knows the future. I was a TA at General Assembly in San Francisco for the first immersive data science boot camp. That's pretty cool. All right. Looks like I'm sort of towards the end of the questions in my hour time. I got about 10 seconds left here. So, any last, maybe one or two questions I'll answer. To wrap up, like I said, again, thanks for being on here. Appreciate everybody that jumped on live. If you guys will make sure and hit the like button, so that that sort of helps me to get these out there even more and continue to do these and so forth. I'd really appreciate that. And the coupon code that I set up for you guys, Radical, 50% off anything in the store, store.johnmorrisonline.com. That will be active for about another hour after this live stream ends. All right, so let me see what we got. Would example code cost me a crap ton of money? I guess it probably depends what it is. Machine learning or web for future? I think there's a future in both. I think probably there'd be people that disagree with me on that, but I think there's a future in both. I don't think it has to be an either or. Could you explain how to go about planning out a site when you start out? What info do you gather from the client? How do you make the plan for building the site? And how do you go about it? I think is what that is supposed to mean. Um, So, this is one of the interesting things, and I think this is sometimes, uh, this mindset is a little hard for people to get, but when I worked with clients, most of the time, I told them how the site was gonna be built, and I know that sounds like, "What?" But that's just the way it was, because the reason they came to me is because I had positioned myself as the expert in that particular niche. And so you gotta do a lot of work in regard to that, to position yourself that way, and but when you do, like, you tell them. So I never really did much of a, "Hey, what do you need? What do you want it to look like?" I would ask some of that stuff, like colors, what are some pages that you're after, so forth. But most of the time, I was telling them, "Look, this is how it needs to be built. This is how it needs to be structured, and so forth." Because I've worked on a membership site for this. Like, I had done projects for really famous people in the niche. So most of the time, they were asking me, "How should I build it?" And I would say, "This is what you need to do. This is how it needs to be built. These are how the pages." And so I already knew going in what it was going to be built like. So, and it's a much better place to be, in my opinion, than constantly asking the client what it is that they want. I know that sounds bad, but it's much better to be in a position where they see you as the expert and you tell them what it's going to be, but instead of them just constantly telling you. All right. Will robots take web developer jobs? Uh, I don't know. If they do, it'll be a while yet, I think. I don't think we're anywhere close to the point. I know that there's all that talk about it, but again, I don't think a bunch of I don't think people actually know. I think people like to think they know what's going to happen, but I don't think any of us actually know. If you listen to the number one guy when it comes to the robots and stuff, Ray Kurzweil, I mean, I think that's the guy most people reference. When he talks about what he calls the singularity, where robots essentially become as smart as us, what he says about that, I've read his book, The Singularity. He says nobody can fathom what it's going to be beyond that, right? Well, so we have no idea. Like, anybody speculating about what it's going to be, we actually have no idea. It's going to be such a dramatic change. We can't even fathom what it'll be like. So I don't know. I don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, if everything happens that people say is going to happen, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it. Right. So I'll deal with it when it happens. And I know that's like what? Like, but that's just the way I look at it. So, um, all right. Looks like there's a few questions here, but like I said, I'm sort of pushing the hour, and my wife is over here sending me text messages. So, um, I'm going to go ahead and jump off here. So again, thanks guys for jumping on. I appreciate this. I love doing this every week. This is like literally the favorite time of my week for me, because I get to sort of just we get to go back and forth like this, even when I get crazy comments about bowel movements and weird stuff like that, and talking about my haircut. But anyway, again, thank you guys for jumping on. Like I said, I really appreciate if you like it, so that I can, that sort of helps me to get the momentum to keep doing this, get this out there in front of other people. So again, really appreciate you guys jumping on, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.